courage check. He has courage 6. Ooh, and that is a fail.
He's got a mighty courage of 1, so we're looking for a 9 on 2 dice.
Oh, merry!
And he does it on a double 6.
Here we go, come on. It's the 3rd 6 in a row.
And now the forces of good are ganging up on that poor defenseless ringwraith, who's just looking for some lost property. And we're looking for 4s here, come on.
Single 4, no!
Oh, yes!
Sam goes down to 2 dog bites on the butt.
Hello and welcome to Striding Edge Games. I'm Julian.
I'm Boris.
And we are here at our first rest point in the Quest of the Ringbearer campaign. We're in the sleepy little hobbit village of Crickhollow on the side of the Brandywine River.
We are. Frodo's not dead yet.
He's not dead yet, no. he's made it there.
Despite my best attempts.
He did leave 2 of his friends behind on the other bank with a couple of ringwraiths, but they're not interested in them, right? You know, they're probably not going to die.
They're not. There's no fellowship in this fellowship.
Yeah, I mean, leave no man behind is a total lie so far.
Well, they're not leaving any men behind because they're hobbits.
Yeah, I mean, hobbits aren't really
You
men.
can leave hobbits behind all you want, just not the Ringbearer. Apparently.
Exactly. How do we feel it's gone so far? Evil player?
I don't want to put it on the scenarios, but I think evil has done as well as it could. That sounds a very wishy-washy answer, but I think, to be honest, those first 3 scenarios are written for good to win them.
They're kind of training wheels.
Because they're kind of training wheels, absolutely. I think it would be really harsh if evil was any stronger in those first 3 missions. It would be really harsh. I think the hobbits acquitted themselves admirably as well. Some standouts being Merry taking on 2 wraiths in the Buckleberry mission on his own, passing on a double. He passed courage on a courage 1.
He left Pippin behind and he ran to kind of tag the wraith that was threatening Frodo and Sam. I mean, he kind of nobly sacrificed himself there. I mean, he passed his. He was at courage 1, right?
Courage 1 because of
passed it on a 2 dice on double 6s.
The scream thing.
The scream,
normal is -4, so he's down to courage 1.
I mean, I think it is worth stating. I mean, hobbits are trash, really.
They're goblins, I think, is roughly the most.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty close to goblins. And I mean, Frodo and Sam do have the might.
Yep.
But there's nothing about them that makes them strong or special. And it's interesting also in terms of sort of the balance of the game that the ringwraiths are real sort of utility heroes, I think, really. I mean, if you're talking about this from a very technical point of view,
they're not.
They've got a lot of magic, but in combat they just got swords, and especially in the scenario where they don't have additional might.
Yep.
That's a real kicker, basically.
They don't have horses to give them the extra attack.
They don't have the horses. They've got 1 attack. They've got 1 wound. They've got no fate.
No might.
No might.
So you are completely at the mercy. Once you get into those second 2 missions, you are completely at the mercy of the good side. If you win priority, good. As long as the good has might on the table, there's nothing you can do about it. Which is as it should be, because it would be bonkers if, especially if the race could cast some of the channeled versions of their spells. It would be bonkers. So. Yeah,
no, I think it interests me to see how the rest of the scenario is, as we go through the whole Quest of the Ringbearer, as we hopefully will be doing.
Yeah.
Just finding out, how the amounts of might on the table vary. I mean, because when we get to like the full fellowship, I mean, you're going to get Aragorn, he's going to have his 3 might. You're going to have Boromir, who's got 6 might.
Yeah.
Gimli's got 3. Legolas has got 3.
You're nearing 20 might.
Gandalf has got 3.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, in certain scenarios, I mean, there's going to be a lot of good might on the table.
Yep.
And I mean, the Warg's mission, the Warg chieftain has might. That's it.
That's it. And after that, it's just infinite hordes of regular wargs, but they're still just regular wargs.
So I mean, it's interesting to see because it really does change the way the game is played. I mean, heroes are such a significant part of the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, you would never, if you were playing, say, the Legendary Legion, the Black Riders Legendary Legion, which is already a step up because they don't lose will from their combats. You would never not take some might on at least some of them, if not probably all of them, I would imagine. So all of them being on 0 might, 7 will, 0 fate is huge because I don't think a Hobbit has killed a wraith yet. But Gildor definitely dispatched one.
Gildor, I think, maybe did 2. I can't remember.
Possibly 2.
We'll double check. But yeah, I mean, they died from their fade out mechanic, really, didn't they?
I guess so. Yeah. Probably also worth noting, we decided to play it as it has been FAQ'd. So again, we might not stick to this. But so at the moment, it's been FAQ'd, so they can't, since the quest book's come out, they can't spend their last point of will on a spell. It has to be combat or something that drains their will, and then they fade away. So
I think they just can't voluntarily spend it.
Sorry, they can't voluntarily spend it. Obviously, when the book came out, they could. So they could spell as their last will, and then
they could just turn up on the board, and they could just be black dart, 7 dice.
7 dice, yeah, if they wanted. So yeah, we might allow it in certain scenarios if it's a really thematic, but to start with, we're playing it that way. So.
I think when we discussed it, we thought perhaps, if Frodo was going to make it onto the ferry, and that it was the last chance a Ringwraith could
they were really
reach out away with his black dart and take him down. It didn't actually come up in that scenario. But it was interesting to play. I mean, I'd say as a good player, I think I probably agree with your assessment. I think these missions are, despite what it may seem, they're quite stacked against the evil side.
I suppose so. The sentries is probably the biggest negative or bonus, I would say. I mean, although saying that, the shortcuts mission, the sentry won. Ringwraith rolled, I think, 3 6s in a row for a sentry roll, which is pretty huge.
And also, I mean, on the shortcuts mission, the hobbits kind of have a soft version of that where they can fail their courage check and then get moved.
And then on the ferry, Buckleberry Ferry mission, the Wraiths did really well on there. I mean, they in the first few turns, they basically cordoned off the hobbits and split them in 2.
Yeah.
And then they were let down and the hobbits were able to sneak through. I think Sam and Frodo pretty much got to the ferry. They were almost on the ferry by the time the alarm was raised.
Yeah.
So maybe if the sentries rule wasn't in the scenarios, I think it'd probably be pretty easy for the 3 Wraiths to
I think you just home in and...
You just compel Frodo out and then charge him and stab him to death, or you black dart him to death, or something similar.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the sentries rule is there because if you could just control your positioning, if you could, know where your models are going to go, it's pretty easy to kill a hobbit.
Yes.
Sure, you only get to roll 1 dice, but the instant you have 2 Ringwraiths against 1 hobbit, you've got a good chance of winning the fight.
Good chance of winning the fight. The strength 4, defense 3, so you're hopefully going to do it. But it's been really interesting as the evil player. I didn't play Magic that much beforehand. I didn't really play magical heroes too much.
No.
So learning Magic's been good. From your point of view, any obvious standouts from the good side?
I think so far, I mean, obviously Merry's done pretty well.
I think he was Bravest Companion in 2 missions. I think he was in the Farmer Maggots.
I thought we agreed on Frodo, maybe.
In Farmer Maggots, he was Bravest Companion because he fought 2 dogs. And in
maybe then.
And in Buckleberry Ferry, he was Bravest Companion. In Shortcuts, Frodo was.
Right, yes, now I remember.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he did pretty well. And I think the Fall of the Took has been sort of roughly spread around.
Yeah, I'd say so. No one's been obviously...
in the last mission, I mean, Frodo getting compelled off the ferry was kind of a big deal. And I think that's the thing, when you've got 3 Wraiths on the board, sometimes you're like, well, if I resist this, I'm just going to have to resist the next 2 spells.
Yep.
And I might just end up spending all of my will in resisting and still not get anywhere. So I think that was a calculated, it's not worth it on my part.
Yep.
And fortunately it did work out, but at the cost of 2 brave hobbits.
I think the 7 will is almost a trap. It seems like loads. When you start the scenarios, every time you start one, you're like, oh, I've got 7 will per Wraith. That's loads. That's 7 combats. But actually, as soon as you cast, unless you're casting something on a 3-up, you're probably going to throw more than 1 dice at it. So then that's only really 2 or 3 spells per Wraith, and then they're right on that 1 or 2 will left combat. And you're going to throw spells before you get into combat, and then you're going to fight for a few turns, probably, because you're outnumbered. So I think it's actually the wraiths are really, they seem very strong, but they come out it's quite tough for them because I think I wonder if perhaps if you were playing a bit more competitively, you do just go the route of I'm going to ignore the entire group and black dart Frodo with every point of will, throw a few dice at it and just drain him, or maybe like drain sap will on one, drain his will, and then black dart and black dart and black dart him.
But it doesn't make a very good story.
No, it's quite a boring game.
You know, Frodo goes out and just gets cast down with evil magic.
Or do you not cast any magic whatsoever and literally guarantee that you have 7 turns of combat?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually the turn thing is something that is interesting when you come from your traditional Games Workshop games. You know, your 40k, your heresy, your fantasy. The idea of the game going beyond 6 turns is that's pretty wild. You know, like to imagine that happening. You know, lots of 40k games. You know, they end at the 4th turn.
Second turn.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's decided by the second turn. But you know, the Lord of the Rings, the fact that it just keeps going. So yeah, I mean, you have 7 will, and that's 7 turns of magic, or 7 turns of combat. Yeah. Which sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. I mean,
in Middle Earth, that could be half the game.
Or less than half. I mean, you know, especially if you're just spending a lot of your time moving or
you have
positioning.
Small sides on both sides, especially in these narrative scenarios. It can go on for quite a while, but quick turns as well.
Yeah, I mean, they can be quite quick. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's just something that strikes me as being interesting.
Yeah, it's really fun. I've been learning a lot about the base mechanics of things like wraiths and hobbits. So I would heartily recommend it as a training, an intro set of scenarios for anyone who's interested.
Not necessarily the most useful of armies, but
but especially you have farmer maggots. It is there's no special strikes, there's no wounds, there's no might, there's no fate. So it's purely just like it's teaching you how the priorities and the movement and combat works. Then you get the second mission. There's magic. There's strikes. There's a bit of might on the table, and the third and a special hero. And then the third mission, there's like a special movement mechanic. There's a river with some difficult terrain. So yeah, it's definitely. I don't know if it was conscious or not, but it was just. I would definitely recommend it if you are on the fence about picking up Quest the Ringbearer with your gaming group.
It's a gentle ramp up, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as we move forwards. Hopefully there's going to introduce monsters. Yeah. That will come at some point.
If we get that far, hopefully.
Cavalry as well, I believe that's coming pretty soon.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I mean, as we're going now, the hobbits are rested, they're having their baths, they're having their meals.
We are switching, as we pointed out in the overview. So if you haven't seen it, there's an overview campaign video where we explain roughly how the campaign works in our system. You've played good and I played evil for the first 3 missions, so we are now, as a rest point, we're going to switch and play opposite sides until the next rest point. So I will be taking over the forces of good and you will be taking over the forces of evil.
Yes.
Any predictions for what's coming up? We won't give you too many. There's one or two surprises in the structure, but the obvious ones that aren't a spoiler will be Old Forest and Fog on the Barrow Downs. We have those 2 missions coming up ahead of Bree. So you'll be playing some interesting opponents.
Yeah.
Anything you're looking forward to, or any predictions? Any tips for using hobbits?
Yeah, I mean, my tips would be just be ruthless about Merry and Pippin. Get them murked. I mean,
they are.
That's what they're there for.
Chaff.
They're there to distract. They're there to.
You might be losing the audience.
Well, maybe. I mean, but it's a good way to tax some will off a ring wraith.
That's true.
Although, the next couple of missions won't have ring wraiths, so that's not really going to help you. But
don't have race for a little while.
Not for a little while. So yeah, I think that was probably what I'd say for sure.
Okay, sacrificial lambs. I would say, although you're not playing with wraiths, so it doesn't really matter, but magic is, like shooting, incredibly variable.
Yeah, I mean, there are some whites that they'll have a bit of magic.
Yep. So whether or not they're worth using. So I think that's mostly it. We will be diving into, I suppose, Chapter 2 of the Quest of the Ringbearer, sort of Chapter 2, which will be the next several missions. We do have a bit of surprise for the next mission, so stay tuned. It's not one in the book. We're adding one in. It's been a lot of fun working on that one as well. A bit of custom terrain and that sort of thing. So do check out, keep an eye out. It should be along very soon. The next instalment. We hope you've enjoyed this first instalment. If you think of any bravest companions or fools of a took for the last 3 missions, let us know below. Let us know what you think. Let us know who you think will be going forwards. Do you agree that Merry and Pippin are sacrificial lambs, or should they be kept alive at all costs?
They should be hung out to dry at every opportunity.
We'll see. Thank you for watching so far, and we'll see you in next chapter of Quest for the Ringbearer.